It will hover, and then they will be able to begin that manual piloting demonstration.
Just about 240 meters away from the space, the astronauts aboard, Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley, have commanded a manual hold. That's to perform a manual piloting test. There is a very nice shot of the Dragon vehicle from cameras aboard the space station. You just saw one of the Draco thrusters there firing, just to keep it in that hold attitude, flying right in front of the station.
Yeah, we have two cameras on the very forward port of Node 2, so right where Dragon's going to be headed following the completion of this manual piloting test.
Dragon SpaceX on Big Loop. C2V2 link reconfiguration is complete. The soft capture ring extension is also complete.
Dragon copies on the Big Loop. Good ring extension and C2V2 reconfig.
So those comms on the Big Loop, the core, the crew operations and resources engineer here at SpaceX letting the crew know that we have a good TDRS link again. Good C2V2 link again. It's common communications for visiting vehicles. And we actually heard a little bit earlier as well comms to Chris Cassidy to monitor this manual piloting test.
Dragon SpaceX on Big Loop, you are go to execute the proximity manual flight test per procedure 4.041, and I have the target fuel levels when you are ready to copy.
Copy or go for 4.041, and we're ready to copy the fuel constraints.
Your 1/3 fuel usage will be 60.9, 2/3 58.9, and terminate 57.9.
We copy 60.9, 58.9, and 57.9. We'll pick up in 4.041.
Good copy, and we're with you.
Dragon, that completes the closure maneuver.
We copy, closure maneuver complete.
That will move on to 4.041, section 4.
We copy and concur.
All right, so our manual flight test has been completed. We're standing by for them to now resume approach 1. So to move in from that waypoint 1. We're already inside of the keep out sphere at this point. Dragon's holding just 176 meters from the space station, and pretty soon they're going to be approaching.
Thanks, Dragon. That completes the manual piloting demonstration. I only had to twist Doug's arm for 2 or 3 minutes to get him to allow me to deactivate the piloting controls.
We copy. Excellent. Thank you. And with that, we ask that you, from the display used for manual piloting, please go to audio settings and adjust a gain setting for seat 1 or 4. And in addition, we would appreciate any handling qualities evaluation of the proximity piloting possible.
We've completed the gain setting adjustment for seat 1, and I'll turn it over to Doug for the handling qualities quick look. SpaceX Dragon on the big loop for the handling qualities. It flew just about like the sim, so my congratulations to the folks in Hawthorne. Flew really well, very crisp. It was a little sloppier and wide, just like we saw in the sim, but all the other axes as well as closure and opening were all just as per.
Excellent to hear. Thank you.
That kind of gives you an indication of sort of how the design process works. You know, Bob and Doug have had lots of opportunities to test this out and sim it and give their feedback. And pretty cool to hear that their sim experience was very similar to what they saw actually on orbit. Just, I think you said 170 meters away from station right now?
Yeah, we're just 176, and I imagine as a spacecraft designer, that's exactly what you want to hear, is the way that I trained you in it here on the ground is exactly how it performed once you're there for the real thing. So the second manual piloting test in the books, Bob and Doug putting Dragon through its paces. Now we're time to put it all to where we get to our endpoint. We're ready to get Dragon docked to the International Space Station.
Dragon SpaceX on big loop. The ground will be resuming approach shortly. We do plan to hold briefly at waypoint 2, so reminder that crew visors down are not required until the ground is preparing to command the final approach.
Well, again, just to give you an idea of how quickly they're moving, they're going at about 0.3 of a meter per second right now. And so if you're having any trouble with that docking simulator online, remember to just slow things down a little bit and your chances will go up exponentially. We just passed 140 meters away. We'll get our live video comm back with the space station momentarily. As soon as we do, we'll bring you back up there. But for now, Bob and Doug continuing to fly in. They're just 135 meters away.
Station on the big loop. In step 2, review of steps 3 and 4 is complete. Crew is on the International Space Station is ready for docking.
Station Houston on the big loop. We copied the review of 3 and 4 complete. International Space Station ready. Thank you.
Expedition 63 Commander Chris Cassidy giving the report. Station is ready for docking.
Yeah, and you can see the trajectory of the spacecraft. There are small corrections that are happening. So as we get closer and closer to station, we're trying to stay within those 2 corridors, which are shown coming out of the docking port that we're going towards. That little dot, I think, was the 20-meter hold point. So that's where we expect there to be the spacecraft holding right in front of the International Docking Adapter. There'll be a go, no-go pole. The ground teams have worked hard over the past probably years to come up with a set of what we call flight rules. So those are technical constraints, items that we look for, that if any of those criteria were violated, then we have a rule that we've predetermined, gives us guidance to say whether we could approach or not. So far, our vehicle has been very healthy, but technical ground teams will all do their due diligence to make sure that it's still safe to approach.
Right, and at this moment, that approach is continuing, still moving in at about 0.3 of a meter per second. Dragon's coming up on just 100 meters away from the space station.
So the very top there is the nose cone on the spacecraft, where we've got a cool view. Left side of your screen is the International Space Station. Right side of your screen is Dragon.
We're inside 100 meters, continuing to close. Again, we're going to have a short hold at 20 meters. Teams will just do a final check, and then they'll give Dragon the go. We're expecting it to be pretty brief. We should get to that hold point in just about 4 minutes, moving at our current pace.
I think you can see a meatball and American flag on that on the spacecraft. The NASA logo, of course, referred to as the meatball. I think there was some spirited discussion about the meatball versus the worm during ascent. And those are, you can see those logos. That structure on the fairing structure is actually what the Super Dracos are housed in. Of course, all of those are deactivated now, only used for launch escape during the ascent portion. Nose cone right at the top of the vehicle, and you can see sort of the sealing surface. Those four circular slots right underneath the nose cone within that red ring are the forward bulkhead Dracos. That's what we were using while we were conducting all those burns, the 5 burns to get to this point. Right now we don't have a reason to use those. We'll only be making small attitude corrections with the service section Dracos. And you can see the service section actually pretty clearly here too. There's a black portion and a white portion sort of separated by a fin. The black portion is solar panels, solar cells that'll charge Dragon's batteries, and the bottom side the white portion is actually a thermal radiator that's used to keep the spacecraft nice and cool. Of course, the avionics and the cabin, making sure that Bob and Doug are comfortable inside.
Looks like we're getting a shadow cast. We are just 60 meters away, continuing to close in, just about 40 meters to go until we're at that hold point. Should get there in just over 2 minutes. Meanwhile, teams in Hawthorne and in Houston doing their internal go, no go for docking. They're going to get all the teams pulled. Once everyone's go, we'll be able to give Dragon the final go ahead for the vehicle to autonomously fly in and dock with the International Space Station. Should be coming up on waypoint 2 arrival in just about 1 minute, 45 seconds. At this point, it'll be 20 meters away from that docking port. The International Docking Adapter number 2 attached to pressurized mating adapter number 2 at the very forward end of the Harmony module.
Right there on the, right around the center, you can see the forward hatch. It's got a window in it. You can see a couple of handles, and there's some features that look sort of bronze-ish. Those are the pedals that we were talking about earlier as part of the soft capture system. So pretty wild, too, to see. We're so close that we're getting shadows from the station on Dragon. Wow.
And we're getting these views of Dragon's approach from 2 cameras that are right next to that docking adapter. And the movement's a little jarring at times. These cameras are being commanded by a person at the Cronus console in Mission Control Houston, and they send some very basic function commands to the camera, which it then executes automatically. And so they're continuing to follow Dragon in, so we do thank them for their diligence to give us these views of this historic moment as we are just less than 30 meters away from docking.
Right above the NASA meatball logo, you can see 3 of the service section Draco thrusters.
That's right, 12 in all. So the 4 of those clusters spread around the vehicle, used for a lot of the attitude control and any small translational maneuvers like we just watched Bob and Doug execute with their second manual flight test.
Yeah, and actually oriented in a way too where if you were to lose some of those thrusters, you still have redundancy and control in those axes. That's part of the reason why they're sort of at the angles that they are.
All right, so we should be getting to waypoint 2 right now. And so it looks like we do have that hold.
Dragon SpaceX on Big Loop. The ground is go for approach 2. We will be enabling the resume shortly. As a reminder, ensure your visors are closed prior to Dragon's departure from the waypoint. And once Dragon is inside the crew hands-off point, retreat and breakout are not permitted. And for your awareness, we have sunset in a little less than 8.5 minutes.
Dragon copies all on the Big Loop. Go for docking.
So Doug on the spacecraft confirming their go for docking. They're going to put down their visors. Got some instructions there about the crew hands-off point that we had talked about earlier. That's a point where we don't want the crew issuing any commands to the vehicle. It's about just about 2 meters away from the docking adapter. I believe the number is about 1.7 meters.
Station Houston on the Big Loop. Houston and station are now go for docking. Chris, you can monitor per steps 3 and 4. 3 and 4 in 1.104 Crew Dragon approach and retreat monitoring.
Copy steps 3 and 4.
Next Dragon on the Big Loop. Our visors are down.
Copy, visors down.
With the crew confirming their visors down, we should see the final approach resume.
Station Dragon on the Big Loop. We are inbound from approach 2.
Copy, inbound.
Station copy.
And we're going to be racing that sunset. The approach has resumed. Dragon closing in. We're inside 20 meters. And yeah, that crew hands-off point should come up in about 3 minutes or so. Right before we get that final docking, it comes about 20 seconds prior, or just about 2 meters away from the station still. And that's just the crew not issuing any abort commands. At that point, it would be too late. And so any aborts would be executed automatically by Dragon itself. So we're closing in at less than 1/10 of a meter per second at this point.
You can see the service section Draco is just doing all these very small, minor attitude corrections. Really, the autonomous docking system at work, making sure that the vestibule and the soft capture system is lined up with IDA2. It's the International Docking Adapter. You can see much more clearly there the hinge mechanism for the nose cone. Those 4 black circles are the forward bulkhead Dracos, not to be used at this time. And then of course the pedals of the soft capture system. Wow.
Dragon on the Big Loop. We're inside 10 meters. We cannot make out the docking target, but we do see the outline.
We copy and concur, 10 meters.
All right, we're less than 10 meters away. Again, we're closing at that rate of less than 1/10 of a meter per second. We should be just about 1 minute 45 seconds away from docking.
There is a center line camera right in that middle, so that you can see where the forward hatch is, and right in the middle of that there's a window and there's a centerline camera that is aligned with the center of the vehicle and the center of the docking mechanism. So that is what the autonomous docking system is using to line up with sort of a cross-hatch, cross-target on the docking port. Again, the forward docking port on PMA2, or the pressurized mating adapter.
And we are just 5 meters away. Again, we're racing that sunset. This Dragon continues to close, 4 meters to go.
Those shadows of the space station on the vehicle. Yeah, you can actually see the centerline camera pretty clearly there, sort of with the contrast of the sun right now.
3 meters to go. Two meters. We are inside the hands-off point, the chop, the crew hands-off point. 1 meter to go. Soft capture complete.
Dragon in SpaceX. Soft capture confirmed. Stand by for retraction and docking.
Standing by.
And we just heard it, soft capture. We have docking, that coming at 7:16 a.m. Pacific time, with the station and Dragon flying 262 statute miles right over the border between northern China and Mongolia.
You saw a little bit of motion there of Dragon. That was that relative motion that the soft capture system is damping out. Once that motion is clear, then the soft capture system will be retracted, and Dragon will go for hard capture.
Again, if just now tuning in, that soft capture, that docking coming 7:16 a.m. Pacific, 10:16 a.m. over on the East Coast. Dragon and the International Space Station were flying 262 statute miles right over the border between northern China and Mongolia. So that soft capture ring now going to retract. It's one more step on the way to docking complete.
Copy. Proceed on board.
Yeah, and so the next step here is once the soft capture ring is retracted, there are 12 latches that we refer to as hard capture latches. Those are what will really create that pressure tight seal between the Dragon spacecraft and the International Space Station. So once soft capture is complete, and I believe we'll get that call from our core here, Anna, then we'll get confirmation of hard capture, and the crew, of course, aboard have this information on their displays, so they'll also see indication of hard capture complete. And once those two steps are done, then that's docking complete.
That's right, and we're expecting to hear some words from everybody. A pretty monumental moment. I mean, for Doug Hurley, he's returning to where he last docked almost 9 years ago on the very last space shuttle mission, now commanding the very first commercial spacecraft to deliver astronauts to the International Space Station.
That's got to be cool for them. They've mentioned quite a few times that their best friends are
on board the station. And the soft capture system has been stowed. We see the umbilical starting to deploy. About 40% of the way so far, going pretty quickly. Should just take a couple more seconds until we're all the way connected. And then we should be getting that docking complete call out from the core here in Mission Control, SpaceX and Hawthorne. Standing by.
Dragon SpaceX docking sequence is complete.
Dragon, we copy docking complete. To say that it's been a real honor to be just a small part of this 9-year endeavor since the last time a United States spaceship has docked with the International Space Station. We have to congratulate the men and women of SpaceX at Hawthorne, McGregor, and at Kennedy Space Center. Their incredible efforts over the last several years to make this possible cannot go overstated. I'd also like to thank Kathy Leaders and her team of the Commercial Crew Program of NASA. An outstanding job by everyone. Last, I'd like to thank the men and women of the National Aeronautics and Space Agency. This is an incredible time to be at NASA. 3 new vehicles to be flown, continuing mission in low Earth orbit, and then to the moon and Mars. We thank you again and congratulate you.
Dragon arriving. Crew of Expedition 63 is honored to welcome Dragon and the Commercial Crew Program to welcome aboard the International Space Station. Bob and Doug, glad to have you as part of the crew. Well done. Bravo Zulu.
Hello, Kathy. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chris.
Endeavour, this is Houston. Bob and Doug, welcome to the International Space Station after your spectacular rendezvous and docking of the first Crew Dragon vehicle. For the first time since the retirement of the Space Shuttle, you have completed a historic ride to the ISS and have opened up a new chapter in human space exploration. On behalf of the flight control teams here in Houston and in Hawthorne, California, and to our SpaceX colleagues, bravo on a magnificent moment in spaceflight history and on the start of a new journey that has changed the face of space travel in this new era of space transportation. Bob and Doug, good luck, and we look forward to working with you on board.
Dragon SpaceX, Bob and Doug, we here at SpaceX are honored to have been part of ushering in this new era of human spaceflight. On behalf of the SpaceX and NASA partnership, congratulations on a phenomenal accomplishment and welcome to the International Space Station.
Aboard the International Space Station, Commander Chris Cassidy standing by in Node 2. Right in front of that is the pressurized mating adapter. He recently opened up the hatch to introduce some of the station air and mix it, get a nice mix in there, avoiding some CO2 pockets. That hatch you see just beyond Chris Cassidy there is normally closed. He was able to open it a little bit earlier today, mix some of that cabin air, and get rid of those CO2 pockets, make sure it's all clean and ready for Bob and Doug. He closed it shortly after just to make sure no FOD or foreign objects, anything were to float in there that would inhibit any hatch opening process today. One of the next milestones for Chris Cassidy will be to open up that hatch. He's got some cameras you see placed within that node. We'll get some good views of the hatch opening and welcoming Bob and Doug here in just about an hour.